For over a century, biblical scholarship operated like a surgical dissection. To understand the text, the historical critical method argued you had to cut it apart. This approach, specifically source criticism, attempted to reverse engineer the Pentateuch. Scholars hypothesized the text was a composite of 4 distinct documentary strands, labeled J, E, D, and P. Form criticism then fractured those strands into even smaller components, looking for isolated folk stories. Over time, this hyper-fragmentation created a massive body of scholarship that was as tedious as it was speculative. It mapped out theoretical origins while failing to account for the actual, observable unity of the completed narrative. Diachronistic methodologies prioritized the hypothetical history of how the text was made over the tangible reality of the text itself. The result was a fragmented mess that grew increasingly disconnected from the literature. Dissatisfaction with that fragmentation led to a synchronistic pivot. Instead of excavating history, scholars began analyzing the architectural design of the final form. Central to this new approach is the redactor, the figure scholars use to explain how various sources were integrated into a cohesive whole. Franz Rosenzweig argued that the symbol R for redactor stands for Rabbinu, our master. He recognized that the theological shape of the Bible belongs to this final editor's vision. Transforming the redactor from a mindless compiler into a master theologian created a logical friction that would soon challenge the very existence of the underlying sources. Oxford scholar John Barton pointed out a fatal logical flaw in this new emphasis, a paradox he called the disappearing redactor trick. Redaction critics attempt to show how a final editor used delicate artistry to stitch diverse materials together, but there is an inverse relationship. As the redactor's unifying work appears more impressive, they erase the textual inconsistencies originally used to prove separate sources. If a text is perfectly coherent and beautifully structured, there is no longer a warrant for dividing it into hypothetical source documents. The hypothetical sources and the theoretical redactor vanish together, leaving behind a single, freely composed narrative. When pushed to its logical end, redaction criticism proves the opposite of the documentary hypothesis. It points to a single, brilliant author. This interest in the final text birthed another movement at Yale under scholar Brevard Childs, known as canonical criticism. Childs argued for reading the Bible according to its canonical shape. He insisted the text must be studied as the received scripture that governs a community of faith, rather than treated as an ancient aesthetic puzzle. While this approach is a welcome departure from textual fragmentation, it carries a significant vulnerability. Childs still maintains a strict wall between diachronistic history and theological faith. Canonical criticism successfully rescues the theological utility of the Bible, but by refusing to defend the text's historical trustworthiness, it leaves the foundation fragile. A parallel approach emerged with scholars like Robert Alter, focusing on rhetorical criticism. This method zeroes in on the artful use of language, narrative viewpoints, and recurring type scenes. A key feature of this analysis is the omniscient narrator. From a secular, critical standpoint, this means the author knows the inner thoughts of the characters simply because the author is inventing the story. Take 1 Samuel 1:5. The Lord had closed her womb. The left shows Esslinger's secular annotation, where the narrator creates Yahweh as a character. The right side shows the evangelical reading of inspired historical insight. Because of this assumption, Alter categorizes Old Testament narrative as historicized prose fiction. He equates the biblical authors to Shakespeare writing historical plays, crafting engaging drama loosely based on real people, but largely invented. This rests on a specific methodological assumption that sophisticated literary structure and thematic plotting are incompatible with accurate historical reporting. We need a reality check regarding the ability of critics to accurately reconstruct an author's history and process. C.S. Lewis frequently observed a trend among his own literary reviewers. Despite living in the same era and sharing the same culture, these critics routinely failed to guess the true history and influences behind his compositions. Lewis deduced that if a 5-minute conversation with a living author could blow a reviewer's laborious fabric into smithereens, then reconstructions of ancient texts are built on pure speculation. Lewis's point reveals a central problem. Diachronistic guesses about dead authors only seem plausible because the dead are not there to refute them. Recognizing this, many modern evangelical scholars are co-opting the tools of rhetorical criticism to defend both textual unity and historicity. This chart maps the current academic landscape based on how different schools treat the biblical text. Source criticism sits low on both axes, while secular rhetorical critics acknowledge high artistry but deny historical truth. In the top right quadrant, scholars like Gordon Wenham and Robert Longacre use advanced discourse analysis to reveal narrative unities in the Genesis flood and Joseph accounts, explicitly refuting the old JEDP source divisions. They demonstrate that acknowledging the literary brilliance of an ancient text does not require sacrificing its reality as a sequence of historical events. Biblical scholarship has been on a century-long detour. We went from searching for fragmented sources to searching for the invisible editor who glued them together, to finally recognizing the seamless artistry of the text itself. The paradox remains inescapable. The more deeply we understand the rhetorical brilliance and coherence of the Bible, the more the supposed evidence from multiple conflicting sources evaporates. The historical reality is that we do not possess a theoretical patchwork of competing documents. We possess a unified text. When the academic magic box containing the redactor is finally opened, the editor is gone. The original, singular author steps right into their shoes.